transition now. You mentioned bid thieves, and that was actually what I wanted to ask you about later, but I guess we can talk about that and then move into the bubble generally. So you mentioned Boise State, you mentioned Davidson. Where are other potential bid thieves sitting besides maybe the Missouri Valley Conference, although we can go into that as well?
Out of them, also go with the Missouri Valley, I think Missouri State is a potential bid thief. The Mountain West, I think, has one in Nevada. Boise State still has at large hopes. I have them in my last four in right now, so they're not really a bid thief yet. Utah State is another potential bid thief out of the Mountain West. People aren't going to like to hear this, but I think Kentucky could be a bid thief.
Yikes. All right, so those are some notes here. SEC, that's interesting you bring it up because the SEC, they have Alabama, but they don't have anyone I see as like this dominant juggernaut. Obviously, Alabama had a great conference record, but they even slipped up a few times. I like Arkansas a lot. I've been on that bandwagon.
I do like Arkansas.
Maybe they win that one just because how hot they are. But no, I think you bring up a good point. Everyone in that conference is very beatable, and Kentucky's got the athletes to do it, even though it's not maybe the most cohesive team out there. Ryan, so we talk about that. Now let's move more into the actual bubble. We alluded to the A10 picture, but where do teams say we mentioned Seton Hall, we mentioned Boise State, we mentioned Duke, we mentioned Drake, we mentioned Utah State, but generally, those are teams that sit across the bubble throughout the country. But what does your last four in and first four out look like at this moment?
Well, right now my last four in is Xavier, Michigan State, Boise State, and Drake. My first four out as it stands is Utah State, Seton Hall, St. Louis, and Duke.
Okay. And I notice you have Utah State out and Boise State in. What motivates that decision?
Boise State, the problem with Utah State really is early in the season. They struggled a bit earlier in the season before they found their way, and so I think it's very, very, very close. I would say it's by a hair, but Boise State's resume is just slightly better than what Utah State has been able to do.
Fair enough. Okay, Ryan. Talking about that, what team as currently stands on that line has the biggest potential to either move in or out of the field?
Boise State to me seems like the obvious choice to the most potential to move out. If they lose their first game in the Mountain West tournament, they're done.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine.
I actually think, considering that, remember, nothing happens in a vacuum, and so you have to take into account the teams around them too. I really think Boise State, to feel good, needs to win 2 in the Mountain West tournament.
And where do you see potential for them slipping up?
Well, they're going to play Nevada in the first round, and Nevada swept them in the regular season, so that seems like the obvious choice for them to slip up.
Okay, good points there, Ryan. Next question here. Give me the breakdown of your top 2 seed lines. I think that's obviously ever changing, especially right now. Seems like Iowa snuck back up into that picture. What are we looking at?
Well, it's not really ever changing because that would imply that it's doing a lot of changing.
Fair enough.
Outside of a couple things, it's not really. You've got Gonzaga, you've got Baylor, you've got Michigan, and you've got Illinois on the one line. And then you've got Iowa, Ohio State, Alabama, and I'm going to go and I have West Virginia now on the 2 line as well.
Okay.
But again, it's not really ever changing. And to be honest, that to me, I think, barring some stunning turn of events in conference tournaments, is probably going to be the 1 and 2 lines next Sunday.
Fair enough. And also Villanova now at 3, Colin Gillespie out for at least, I think, the rest of the season with MCL tear.
MCL.
So we talk about Nova already being a potential upset trendy pick. If they're in a 3-14 game, how inclined are you to look at that 14?
Very inclined. Actually, the 14 seed I have them paired up with is UMBC in my latest bracket.
Lovely.
I'd be very inclined to look at any 14 seed really, but especially a team like a UMBC that can score, that can just that offense that can get very streaky like that. I'd be very inclined to look at that 14, especially with the depleted Villanova team. That would sound like a very obvious potential 14/3 to really consider.
Good points there, Ryan. All right, the next thing we have on the list, what teams are rising and falling, and then after that, we're going to get into Rutgers. So we're going to save a specific section of here for Rutgers basketball because we have to honor Gary Parrish and Pinnacle Bank Arena. But outside of Rutgers, who do you have? What seeds are rising through the field, and which seeds are maybe potentially been falling to the bubble?
Yeah, well, Rutgers has definitely been falling. That's for sure. Rising outside of like the main bracket picture, it would not be March if Syracuse was not squarely on the bubble. Syracuse has been rising recently, a win over North Carolina of late, cemented their spot on the bubble. Now they do need to win a game or two in the ACC tournament to get to feel good about an at-large, but Syracuse has played their way onto their oh-so-familiar spot of being squarely on the bubble. Another team that's been rising is Oregon recently. They finally are fully healthy, and they've been playing really well and rising up seed lines. That is a 7 or 8 seed that a top seed is not going to want to see in their bracket.
Fair enough. Okay, Ryan. What about falling outside of Rutgers? What is there any I know Missouri's been plummeting a bit, obviously, but what else are we looking at up here?
Missouri has been plummeting a bit, although they've kind of stabilized, especially with that nice win at Florida that they just picked up. But Oklahoma has also been falling a bit. It's not that they're not good. Most of their losses are by a few points, but they're kind of regressing to the mean, if you will. They were probably overseeded in the committee's top 16 reveal. And so they're now starting to fall back down towards a 6, which is where I have them, which seems more realistic for them than that 3 seed that they had in the committee's reveal.
And on that note, actually, what teams are if you're looking at your bracket as is, what teams do you feel are outplaying their talent-wise, seed-wise? So which teams do you think are more overseeded, and which teams do you think are more underseeded?
Well, and I also don't think that overseeded just means they're playing better than their seed. Like, I think Virginia is going to be overseeded. I think Virginia is going to get a 5. I have them as a 5, but I think that the way they're playing for the most part is more talent level of a 7 or an 8. But you're going to see teams like that. Virginia, Kansas might be a seed line or two too high. Basically, if you want to talk who's overseeded, look at the biggest brand names, go to their schedule, see what they did. Odds are a couple of them are going to be overseeded because of who they are.
And it's interesting. So, Joe, we should unpack this, Joe, and let the bracketologist weigh in on our debate. So on Twitter, you like this tweet, Ryan, so I think you might be supporting me. I tweeted Winthrop over Kansas anyone last night because I was like, you know what, let me meme a little, but also low-key Winthrop's a really good team. They play good defense.
Far better than UTEP.
Far better than UTEP. Far better than North Dakota
State too. Yeah.
So I want to know, Ryan, do you think it's possible? Is it possible? Am I dumb, or do I actually have a decent idea in the head?
Oh my God, no! You're very smart. Winthrop over Kansas is not just possible; it would be one of the most picked 13/4 upsets if it were to happen. I guarantee you, if I were to look at like an ESPN Tournament Challenge database, if that happened, Winthrop over Kansas would be the most popular 13/4.
Joe, what do you have? Because obviously you like Kansas, you like their talent. They've been up and down all year, and they were playing pretty well before this UTEP game.
First of all, if we're going off of just points in a bracket, like one of those bracket challenges, I would never pick Kansas. I would pick Kansas every day over a 13 seed. Like, that's just dumb because,
even though they're kind of known for losing to some of these trendy mid.
Yeah, no, I get it. But, like, I mean, you don't pick the 13 over the 4 seed unless you know it's going to,
Well, the bracket we play is just if you get it right. It's all about getting it right.
You know what? I hate those brackets. I like my bracket because I have a chance of winning money. But anyway,
you too.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, I wouldn't pick I know they are a bit, they've been sloppy for
That's fair.
games. Yeah. But this is Kansas. I mean, I am not going to say that they're going to get a first-round exit to Winthrop. Even though Winthrop is a good team, I can see it happening because it's March.
Yeah.
Anything can happen in March. Virginia got upset by a 16 seed a few years ago, right? Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, so anything can happen in March. I just don't see it happening until the game's played. I would never pick Winthrop over Kansas is what I'm going to say.
You never pick upsets in your bracket? What's the
No,
point
I
of
pick.
filling out a bracket?
Oh no, he definitely picks whoever plays Duke. He definitely plays whoever plays Duke.
If
Well,
Duke
in that
makes
case, he's
the
not going to have an
bracket,
upset to pick this year.
Yeah, but I mean, like normally, when Duke's in the field, I guarantee my man's looking at the team playing Duke, right?
First of all, yeah. First of all, I do pick upsets because in my challenge, you get double points for upsets.
Yeah, but he picks 9 over 8.
You always pick the 9 over the 8.
9 seeds are actually favored sometimes.
Exactly. That's why you pick 9
sometimes.
over 8. That's automatically 2 points if you get the game right. And if you don't, you missed 4 points. So, I mean, I'm going to pick the 9 over 8. But yeah.
I got a question though, because obviously stylistically, I think this matchup, and this is all hypothetical, but with Kansas, right? You have a team that sometimes struggles to be consistent offensively. Defensively, they're good, and it keeps them in games. But when their offense goes to crap, for lack of a better term, they struggle. And you have a good defensive team in Winthrop that's efficient on the other end of the floor, right? Textbook wise, that seems pretty.
Yeah, and Winthrop also has a potential future NBA player that many people may not know. If you haven't heard the name Chandler Vaudrin, I'd suggest you watch him play because he's got a future in the game of basketball.
There we go. All right. So that's just one specific case study. Joe, Ryan, and I, and also potential more panelists on the Selection Sunday special will talk about this more in depth. But the next question I want to ask you, Ryan, we alluded to it earlier. Rutgers lost.
Wait. Okay,
fair enough. Joe, ask your question.
Look, I get, it might be a good matchup for Winthrop over Kansas, but I mean, it's Kansas. That's all I got to say. It's just,
it's one of those picks that you look really smart.
It's the only team that, is left in, the tournament that actually has a high seed, Duke isn't in the tournament right now. UNC is not going to be a high seed. Kentucky just sucks.
Yeah. Michigan State's a bubble team.
I mean, yeah, it's the only team that has remained good,
Good is a strong word.
Gonzaga's still good.
Gonzaga is rocky year to year. Kansas is more.
Gonzaga's made 20 straight NCAA tournaments or something.
Shut up. Okay, so what? You can make a tournament. There's 64 teams.
That's true. Okay, anyway, enough on that. Ryan, I want to ask you Rutgers. They lost to Nebraska in the fortress of Pinnacle Bank Arena. It's impossible to play there. It's so hard. Nebraska's only lost every game this year.
One doesn't simply waltz into the fortress and just expect to win easily. But anyway, Rutgers is now trending very dangerously towards last 4 byes and then last 4 in territory. They've been one of the biggest disappointments of the season, along with Richmond. I think they're going to be one and done.
And it stinks because they were playing very well early in the season. Both Joe and I thought they were going to be one of those teams that surges up the rankings.
Yeah, we definitely were high on them at the beginning.
I was high on them too, but they peaked at the wrong time. Classic case of peaking at the wrong time.
Okay. And the last thing we want to ask here, that's on our list, there is Duke, North Carolina on tomorrow night. And obviously both of these teams are bubble teams. I want to know what each team has to do to get in, because obviously North Carolina has been consistently in a better position to make the tournament, but they lost to Marquette in the game they scheduled last minute. They then go to the Florida State last weekend and win. So I'm just curious what you think the implications are. I'm
sorry, but I just need to get a consensus before I start talking on this. Who do we think is going to win tomorrow? Can we just go down the line, starting with Brian?
I think Duke's going to win.
I think Duke's going to win.
I think UNC is going to win.
The reason I'm picking Duke is because UNC, what they do is they have this one high where they'll pull off this huge upset and then they'll collapse. I see them completely collapsing. I think Duke, when they played UNC last time around, played above their normal standard. And without Jalen Johnson, I think they've been a better team.
Agreed. I don't like the way Jim Boeheim has gone about saying it, but
Yeah.
I agree that Duke has been better without Jalen Johnson.
I think everything Boeheim has said was like the rhetoric he used was terrible. What I will say is I think Johnson's fit on that team, basketball-wise, purely basketball-wise, it was shaky.
It was shaky at best, yeah. And I also think that even though Duke has had a couple tough losses recently, they've been very, very close in overtime in both of those against Louisville and Georgia Tech. North Carolina, the way they've been playing is kind of shaky lately. They played really well against Florida State, not so well against Marquette and Syracuse. I actually have a lot more confidence right now in the way Duke's playing, and also this is desperation time for Duke. North Carolina's in a better position. I don't want to say they're a lock, but I think a lot would have to happen for North Carolina to fall out.
Especially with the bias they'll get.
Yeah, no, and it would start with them not only losing to Duke, but then they'd have to also lose their first ACC tournament game for that to even become a possibility. Even then, I would kind of doubt it, unless a bunch of other teams around the bubble started doing things. But for Duke, this is a must-win game. If they want to even have a thread to hang on for an at-large bid going into the ACC tournament, they must win this game, and I think they will pull it out. It's going to be a very close game. I think Duke wins. Even with a win, Duke still needs to win probably 2 games in the ACC tournament to even get to have a realistic chance. They'd also have to hope for minimal bid thieves.
And also, Joe, when I pick Duke, I am by no means endorsing them as a program. I hope you know that. I
feel like you are.
I do not think they're a quality basketball team. I think they are super inconsistent. I just agree with Ryan in the desperation factor. And also, the way this rivalry works, nobody sweeps anyone. The last time
that's true.
Yeah, the last time someone swept was Duke in 2015, and that was the team that won the national championship. Neither of these teams are title contenders. They're both relatively evenly matched. I think that Duke will have a chip on it.
You're right. They're both relatively evenly matched. They both stink.
Exactly. So I'm not. I don't think either of them's winning a tournament game unless it's a first 4 game.
Yeah, I mean, even then, I don't even think they should. I think UNC is going to make the tournament like slimly, but Duke should not have any reason to be in that tournament.
I think if you look at their resume and their wins, their only good win they have.
If you look at their resume, they canceled a lot of games because they were scared of COVID.
They canceled some non-conference games because they wanted to give their players a break or something like that.
Yeah, we already talked about that.
We were talking about bid thieves. They stink this year, but I don't think you can completely – but with how bad the ACC is, I don't think it's so extremely far-fetched that Duke wins the ACC tournament.
Yeah, I think someone would have to pick off Florida State. Florida State would give them that.
I agree with that, but Florida State has had their issues with Georgia Tech, for example. I don't – every other team in the ACC tournament, I think Duke could theoretically beat.
Fair enough. And Ryan, the last question I have is, what games are you looking at bubble-wise this weekend?
Well, I think bubble-wise this weekend, I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be watching a few teams. I'm going to be keeping an eye on Syracuse. I'm also going to be keeping an eye on Louisville against Virginia. They've kind of slipped dangerously close to bubble territory. A win over Virginia would really put any doubt about their belonging in the tournament to rest. And then the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament semifinals tomorrow with Loyola Chicago playing Indiana State, who beat the Ramblers earlier this year in Terre Haute, Indiana. And then Drake is going to be playing the winner of Missouri State Valparaiso because, unfortunately, Northern Iowa got COVID and canceled on them last minute. Going to be a real shame when a conference championship is decided that way.
Yeah, and you think the Drake curse would affect the team that, is named after the artist. But I guess now it works.
You would think, but it's God's plan.
All right, Ryan, we're going to send it over to Joe. If you have anything to ask him, I know that Joe has pressing questions always every week.
I actually want to know how you think my Texas is going to fare in the tournament.
I'm actually curious about this.
Texas?
Yeah.
I think they're going to get upset in the first round.
Oh, you don't need to say that.
They aren't playing well of late, but they got a big win against Oklahoma.
They did get a big win over Oklahoma, but I'm not necessarily thrilled with how Texas is playing of late. Overall, I'm not that impressed. And Greg Brown is good. I think they have a lot of good to really good players, but do they have that dude that can just take over a game when things aren't going well and make the big plays necessary? I think Courtney Ramey and Andrew Jones could be capable of it. They've hit some clutch shots this year, but I'm not sure on the big stage of the NCAA tournament, do they have a go-to guy that when, the 13 seed is on a 12-0 run and the limited crowd is starting to roar in approval, do they have a guy that can make plays? I'm not sure they do. And I think, and I worry with Texas, if they draw, say, like a UC Santa Barbara with this kid, Ja'Cory McLaughlin, who's an absolute stud, some of these potential 13 seeds have studs that could just really pose issues for Texas.
Hey, y'all. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you want to see our last video, click here. If you want to see our next video, click here. And if you want to subscribe, click on my face.